Right, good afternoon everybody. Just a quick recap on what we've done. We've put in all the resistors and we've put in the capacitors, the ceramic capacitors, which didn't have to be any way, it could be any way round, it didn't have to be positive sensitive. Well, then the last thing we did was we put in the last four capacitors that were on the list, the tantalum ones. These were positive sensitive, so they have to go in the right way round. And then we put in afternoon everybody, just a quick recap. We've put in all the resistors and we've all inserted the ceramic capacitors. Then we put in the last four tantalum capacitors, which were positive sensitive, so they had to go in the right way round. Then we put in one of the integrated circuit bases, and we now have to put in the remaining three. And bearing in mind that the little nick on the end here, just a little cutout. Let's put it on a piece of white card and we can see. There we are, there's a little tiny cutout. That has to go onto the circuit board with the little nick. There's a little kink in the line. That's the way round they go. These two are the same, but they go the opposite way round, so you have to be careful of that. And then we put in the large circuit holder, and we can go ahead and do that, and I'll come back when that is done. I will show you the best way of putting these sockets, IC sockets, into the board. Once we've lined up the little lug and with the little nick that's on the circuit board, pop it in, turn it over and hold it flat with your finger. And what I do is pull a piece of solder out and let it support. It will float in mid-air. So what we do is then get the soldering iron, and what I do is touch the soldering on the first pin to solder, apply a little bit of solder, let it cool down, then that will now hold in flat, so we can see it. That's held in flat. Then we can just turn it over then, and then we can solder the rest in as we did before. Let me try and adjust. And as before, there's the components all soldered in. There it is on the circuit board. And then we do this with the remaining two, the rather large one and the other small one. So we'll come back when that's all done. Right, there we are. Now we can see excuse me, we can now see that all this IC boards are in, but at this stage we do not put in the integrated circuit boards machine. These little IC chips, we do not put those in yet. They get to be put in later on. Right, now the next thing to be put in is a large black diode, which is following the instructions, is the 1N5821 diode from the component bag. Well, I've tipped it out the component bag and this is the diode, and as you can see, as I said earlier on, that there is a little grey ring around one end. That's the positive end, and that has to go excuse me, that has to go in the D1 position, which is on the circuit board. It's down the circuit board, which is just here, and as you can see here, there is the white band which denotes which end that the silver ring goes. So as before, we fold the ends round on the diode, and enter those into there like so. So that then, as you can see, is sitting nicely there. We can then turn that over and we can solder that in position. I always give a little blow just to cool them down as quick as I can, so I don't want to overheat them for too long, so it doesn't do them any favours. So we'll just quickly do that. And there it is, soldered in place. Then we can cut there again. We can then cut the backs off. Yes. And then we can see how neat the back is looking and how the front is progressing along quite nicely. The next operation is to fit 4 LEDs, which are red, green, yellow and orange. When they go to their respective sockets, now the LD1, which is the yellow LED, you will note it has a longer leg, and that is the positive anode, and that leads towards the positive on the PC board. So we now have to look for LD1 on the board. LD1. There we go. LD1 is there, so that pops in there. LD2 is the green, so the long leg has to go to the plus. Then we have LD3, which is the red. There, same again, long lead goes to the plus. Plus, you might not notice it on here, but on an LED there is a flat in one area, and the flat, there's a little tiny flat across there. It's hard to see on camera, but there, take my word for it, there's a little flat there. And if you look at the circuit board, it's, take the red one out, it's shown as an oval with a flat on it. Well, those flats correspond as well, so that helps you link which way round to put the LED. And then LD4 is the orange, which I need to look for. LD4, the orange one is over here, and the long lead to the plus sign, the short leg to the negative there. So same again, put them in, just pull them, just pull the leads back just a little bit, just to support them in there, stop them falling out. That makes life a little bit easier. There, when it comes to soldering, lay this down, solder line, and we'll just solder those in. And there we are, all the LEDs are all in place, and we can snip the backs off of those. There we are, job done. Right, we now need to fit the trim pot, which is a little variable resistor. These could be different colours depending on availability of the components that come from Merg. So these could be a different colour, but it's a little three-legged pot with a little adjustable slots. Now they go to the R1 on the board, which is just here. And you can see there is 1, 2, 3 across, and then it's 1, 2, 3 down. Well, the ones that run down the middle are actually all the one same connection. It depends where the legs are on the pot as to which hole it will go in. but the square hole and the ones next to the square hole on the two corners are where the two legs of the resistor go, and then the third leg goes into one of the other three. So if I can show you like that, I'll go in there, go in there, and then the one will go into the middle hole as it happens. Let me just say that's in the right place. Now the instructions say sometimes you might have to straighten with a pair of pliers just to help the legs in, which is what I think I might have to do in this case. So I shall come back after I've straightened these little legs out. All it is there's a little kink in the leg, you can see there, and they need to be straightened out a little bit. So I'll come back after that is done. There we are. You can see now where it's pressed into, and the little three legs are just sticking out of the back, as you can see just here. Then that's pushed home. We can now tip upside down, and we can now solder those in. Just a quick touch with the solder iron. There we are, and that the variable resistor is in place now. Right, next we have to find what is called the header pins, which is a strip of these, but if you look at the side of the black strip, there's little nicks, and we're going to cut these with a nice pair of side cutters. So we want for position for LK2 and junction 7 to start with. So LK2 is just here on the circuit board, and it's just two little header pins going there. So we cut these at the position, I'll show you this, at the position for two pins to be cut off there, like so. So now we have just two pins. Now there's a short length and a long length. The short length goes into the circuit board like so. Let me turn that over, press down, and we solder those into position. Let's do this as well, you can see. Right, we're going to just going to pop those back in as they fell out. Like so. Push that one down. Then the next one we want to do is J4, which is a 6-pin one here, but you'll notice, well, I hope you can see, that there is a hole missing. So 1, 2, 3, then we need to remove number 4, and then 5 and 6. So we're going to cut 6 off of here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're going to cut that one there. But we need a pair of long nose pliers to pull out we need to remove number 4. So what this means is we're going to have to pull number 4 out. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 there. So if we hold that there, we should be able to pull that out like that. So now you'll see number 4 is missing. So this the same again, the short legs go into the circuit board, so it's then sitting in the circuit board just here, like so. I'm going to turn that over, and the same again, we're going to solder those in. If I put that in right. What I might do is hold the 2-pin end, turn it over, like we did with the IC holders. Hold a bit of solder there in the air, and then we'll just solder the first one in, just to hold it into position. That's in position now. Now we can just do the rest. There we are, there they are in these ones here, all in nice and still nice and tidy on the back. The next part is what we call side headers. So these are the little plug sockets basically. So you'll see there's 2 pins, and we've got to fit them to J1 and J3. So we want 2 of those. So we've got the 2, and that will go in like that way round, with the opening pointing to the outside of the circuit board. So we'll turn that over. In actual fact, I might just hold that in there again. My fingers, like so. Let's turn that up a little bit. I'll just hold that in there with my fingers. And then pull the solder up like this. Solder line. Just solder one in first. Making sure it's pressed flat to the circuit board. Then we'll just pop along and do the second one. Just turn it on the first one. There. So now you can see there it is in position. And we do the same on the other end with the 2-pin one. Pop that in that way. So as you can see now, we have one on each end. Now then, there are also 4-way headers, which are the same, only they're double in length. And these go on to J5 and J2. And exactly the same way, they fit in the end. So it's exactly the same procedure. I'll come back when I've done all of these, as it's, you know, it's exactly the same now. So there we are, there's all the plugs, sockets in, and the board's starting to look something now, isn't it? It's starting to look like a circuit board. Right, the next one to put in is called a Molex type header, which is a little white, and this goes into the AWD socket, which is just here, and then you can see the white line. Can you see there's a white line there? Well, that white line denotes this piece of plastic standing up at the back of the switch, of the socket, sorry. So that's the way it has to go round, because the audible, what plugs into that is this audible sound warning speaker, and that has to be positive, has to be on the left hand side where the plus sign is, so it has to go around the right way. We'll come to that later on when we fit it. So just to put that in, it is that way round. So we should go ahead and put that in now. Next we're going to fit this electrolytic capacitor, and there again it has a short leg and a long leg, and the grey line is a negative, so the opposite of the grey is the positive, which is the longer leg, and that has to go into C9 here, and the longer leg goes to the plus sign on the outside, so it's that way round. And that goes all the way home there like that. We'll just solder that in. Tags off. And there we are, there's the capacitors done. Right, the next component we need to assemble are 3 voltage regulators. These are these here, but we have to be very careful because they are all, I don't think you'll be able to see on this video. It just won't focus properly, but they are 3 individual different rated voltage regulators. One is actually a 12 volt and another one is a 5 volt and one is a variable, so we do need to pick the right voltage regulator, and they'll be fitted in these 3 spots here. And as before, you can see on the drawing of the circuit board, you can see a little thin white line going across the very edge. Well, that denotes the heat sink plate on the back of the voltage regulator, so it just shows you that it goes that way round, so the metal to the outside. So I'll put the right ones in the right slots, and then I'll come back after we've soldered those in. Okay, now they've been soldered in, they're all in position, the right ones are in the right position, but the next thing we need to do is to place heat sinks. You're issued with 3 heat sinks. Oh no, I stand corrected, 2 heat sinks. The middle one doesn't need a heat sinks, it's just the outer 2 that need heat sinks. And there are various little components for doing this. Little insulation. There's a strip of insulation pad with, it has actually got 3 pads on it, but we're only going to use 2. But before we do that, because this board has now basically been finished with regards to the soldering, apart from putting the ICs, integrated circuits, in the boards, the major work has all been now done, so that is now sort of complete. But we do need, just to assemble this, so that in the kit you'll find there's 2 little connectors, really is what they would be, and this body here, this body will in effect plug it into there. That's what that will do. So it's where it plugs into the circuit board. But we do need to wire that the right way round. But what we need to do first of all is these two little tags, we need to cut them off their support. So we'll just snip that off, and we'll just snip this one off. So now we have just a little connector, which we now have to, I have to use a magnifying glass for this because my eyesight isn't the best, and they need to be crimped in. So what I shall do is I shall get my little crimping pliers and we shall close that up. What I try and do is close one leg first of the crimp, it's a little bit fiddly, but it's easily doable. We'll crimp that up and we'll crimp the other side. And then towards the back there are two more little crimps that crimp. So there are four little legs that we need to fold over and crimp into position. Okay, now they have been soldered in, they're all in position, the right ones are in the right position. But the next thing we need to do is to place heat sinks. You were issued with 3 heat sinks. Oh no, I stand corrected, 2 heat sinks. The middle one doesn't need a heat sinks, it's just the outer 2 that need heat sinks. And there are various little components for doing this. Little insulation. There's a strip of insulation pad with, it has actually got 3 pads on it, but we're only going to use 2. But before we do that, because this board has now basically been finished with regards to the soldering, apart from putting the ICs, integrated circuits in the boards, the major work has all been now done, so that is now sort of complete. But we do need just to assemble this, so that in the kit you'll find there's 2 little connectors, really is what they would be, and this body here, this body will in effect plug it into there. That's what that will do. So it's where it plugs into the circuit board. But we do need to wire that the right way round. But what we need to do first of all is these 2 little tags, we need to cut them off their support. So we'll just snip that off, and we'll just snip this one off. So now we have just a little connector, which we now have to, I have to use a magnifying glass for this because my eyesight isn't the best, and they need to be crimped in. So what I shall do is I shall get my little crimping pliers and we shall close that up. what I try and do is close one leg first of the crimp. It's a little bit fiddly, but it's easily doable. We'll crimp that up, and we'll crimp the other side. And then towards the back there are two more little crimps that crimp. So there are 4 little legs that we need to fold over and crimp into position. As you can see then, it's something to focus on. There it is, there it's crimped on. So we need to do that with the same, with the black wire. And when that's done, we'll just deal with that one for the moment. On the circuit board, there's a plus side to one side of the fitting. When this is pressed on, which is goes on like that, so it's this side here that this little red clip needs to push in. So we need to push that. Now you see on the back there's 2 little slots. So those little slots, that little raised area has to go in up towards the slot. So for you to look like that, that pops in like that. That just pushes in, and then that's it. It's then clipped in. So it's then firmly clipped in. So we do the same with the black wire, and then that part is complete. So I'll do that and then come back to you once it's done. Okay, so the black one is now pressed on, and the same again, the raised part of the clip goes to the slot side up, and that just pushes in, and that just clips home. So now that's in. So when you come to assemble it, it doesn't have to be assembled yet, but when you come to assemble it, the warning will just be plugged. Let's get that right. That just pushes in like that. So the audible warning alarm fits onto the circuit board. So that's that job done. So now we need to put these heat sinks onto the voltage regulators. So as I said, on the strip there's 3 pads. Now also in that pad, if you look closely, which you won't be able to see on camera, there is a little hole that's been pressed in. We need to take that little bit out. There. So you can see I've taken those out. There for the screws and that to go through, so everything all lines up. So what it is that this has to be insulated from this metal plate, so there's no chance of short out, because these are not just heat sinks, they are part of the circuit, and they can be shorted out, which we don't want. So we need it comes with little bushes. They need to be pressed into the, put into the backs. We'll do one at a time. So then we can peel one off. Let's try and take that off. There's our sticky. So let's take the little bush out, and what we'll do is we'll stick this onto the back. So you can see that that is on the back there. So it insulates the heat sink. Then the little black bush goes in like so. And then the heat sink fits in over there like that. Then we need one of the little bolts, nuts and washers. So we pop the bolt in. In actual fact, we'll do it the other way. So what we'll do it the other way. What we do is put the nut in the washer, then we'll pop that into there, pop that into there, put the little washer on. It's all very fiddly, but quite straightforward really, it's no big problem. And put the nut on. Screw that. Oh. We've got a screwdriver. And I got a screwdriver. Oh. Just hold that with a little pair of pliers. You can screw that home then. So there's the heatsink. And we do the same with the other outside one. So when I've done that, we'll come back after that's done. So they're the two heat sinks on. Now what we can do, just to make sure, is if we've got our voltmeter and we set it up to just do a live test to make sure that there's no shorts at all, we can put it on the nut at the back and we can touch this. Same again. So that's making sure that they are not shorting out with the back of the volt controller. So there we are, that's that done. Then the next job will be to check the PCB trackside for any unsoldered bridge joints. so we need to just give it a courtesy look to make sure that all the joints are all nice and neat and look good. Doesn't look to be any that we've missed. Then after that we will then start doing some voltage tests, and I'll get back to you shortly. Right, with this kit we need to power it with 15 volt supply. Now then, I have purchased from Merg a 15 volt power unit. Comes with this plug on the end which just unplugs there, so we have this adapter. Now then, with this adapter, plus we need the mains power lead that plugs into the power supply, but that's a 15 volt one, which is a Merg, you get from the Merg website. So what we need to do is we need to get the plug that's come with the kit, and we have this, but we need just to link them up with some pieces of wire to connect the two together. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and come back shortly. Right, so now I've connected the adapter, so that plugs into the board here where it says 15 volts and 0 volts. This one is above the one that says cab, can L, can H and 0 volts. So just to get your orientation right. It's on that end. Now then, when we plug in the 15 volt supply, we should just have the red LED light up. And there we are, red LED. There's a light. So that part's all good. Then in the instructions we need to check out the circuits that we've done. So let me see what we do next. We have to check that the IC2, IC5 and IC7 regulators, we have to check that these aren't getting hot, so we need to just fill these just to make sure they're not getting warm. Lovely, they're not getting warm, so everything stays right. So also with the kit we have these little jumper tags. Let me get this piece of white card. They're little little sockets that are going to link these little jumper pins where they are needed. So we have to link plugs into link LK2, which is this one next to where the power's fed in, this little one here, and we have to put one onto there. So we've linked those two together. And then using a multimeter set to its DC voltage range, check for the presence of 12 volts between pins 1 and 4 of J2. So oh dear, this leads a bit. So we need to find J2. Right, now then, junction 2, J2, is this block, the 4-way plug next to where the power is coming in. So what we have to do is set our multimeter to DC value on the multimeter. Then we place in the back here, we place the negative at 0 and the positive at the cab where it says cab. And then you look at the multimeter, and let me show you. Multimeter saying 12 volts. So we are getting the 12 volts at that point. So do this touching the probes at the rear entry. If is found, then check the soldering is greater than. Alright, can be. The jumper link can be removed afterwards. So now we can remove that jumper link. So we can take that jumper link back out. Now we need to measure, check that approximately 11.4 volts DC is found across the terminals of C12. Then check that 5 volts DC is found across terminals of C2. So C12. So if we turn the board over, there's C12, which is the capacitor that's by the center of the middle voltage regulator. If we turn that over to there, we need to check the positive on this pin and that pin. Does that give us? And that's given me a reading of 11.35, and they're looking for 11.4. So that's okay. So that's found across there. Then check that 5 volts is found across the terminals of C2. C2. That's those there, which is, that's these two here. That's showing 5 volts. So across this capacitor, this one in here, that's showing that we are getting 5 volts. This is all with instructions, so you should all be able to understand this when you come to do it for yourselves. But I thought if I just show you how it's done, then it will give you some help. So let's see, do it. Pins 20 and 8 of IC3. The IC3 is the big one in the middle. There's this here. We've got to check pins 20 and 8 and pins 3 and 2 of IC1. The pins are numbered in anti-clockwise, starting with PCB legend dot on the outside of the DIL socket, which means we have to find pins 20 and 8. In this top corner here on the circuit board is a little white dot. With that little white dot is pin 1. So we have to find pin 8 and pin 20. Pin 8 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. There, and that's given us 5 volts as well. So it's pin 8, starting from there down to here, and you continue around to pin 20 on this side, and you should get 5 volts, which is what I'm getting from there as well. And then from pins 3 and 2 of IC1 and IC1, there is the dot on this corner. So it's pins 2 and 3, 1, 2 and 3 is also 5 volts. So that's the board so far is all checking out correctly. Now we have to measure the voltage across J5 pins 1 and 4, which should vary between 5 and 14 volts, as the trim pot VR1 is adjusted. If this is not found, then switch off and check the circuitry around IC5. If all is okay, then set VR1 for a voltage here of 12 volts DC for further testing. So we need to find J5 J5. Right, J5 is on the other side on this end, and it's the 4-way power block there. So we need to put the negative on 0V and the positive onto VE plus, which is the two end terminals. Then on the voltmeter they're showing 10.96 volts. So we now alter the trim pot. So you put a screwdriver into the little trim pot in the corner, and we turn that one way or the other till we get to 12 volts. And it is very, very small movements. Well, I've got it down to 1202. I think that'll be close enough. So that is now been set. It's correct. If all is well, disconnect the power source and wait for a couple of seconds for complete circuit discharge, and insert the CAN bus transceiver IC1 microcontroller. So we just need to power off. Now for the next operation, this is where this piece of kit will come in handy, because you do need to have any static in your body removed. So put that round to your wrist there, adjust it so it's firm. That is there. Then we need to earth this end, so that is fairly around your wrist there, and that is our earth, and we shall earth that on there. And let me check that that is earthing out. That's it, I'm being earthed now. Because what we have to do now is insert transceiver IC1, which is one of these chips, and we're looking for MCP 2562. MPC 2562, which is this one. Now these are all different, so you do have to put the right one in the right place. So now on this chip, in one corner there's a little dot, and there's also a dimple in the end of the chip. There's a little tiny dimple. I don't know if you can see that, but that has to orientate the right way, so the dot goes to the dot that's on the circuit board, on the corner of the circuit board, and this one goes to IC1, which is, there's IC6, IC1, which is this one here. So that's going to go around the other way, and that fits into there. So you line it up carefully with the holes, then you just carefully, what you might have to do is just press these legs, put it on a flat surface and just lightly tip it, then turn it over and tip it up again, and that just lightly twist, just to close the legs up a little bit, because they are a little bit too splayed, so you might need to close them up. Then enter that in, and then just carefully push home. There we are, and that chips in. So then we need to put microcontroller IC3, and that will be the long pick, which is this one. This is quite an important one. That is the same again. You have in this corner the little dot by the yellow LED, that is that corner, and the same, the pick has the recess and a little dot, and that's where that one has that. Well, that one goes in there again. You need to do the same, just carefully, very carefully hold flat on the board and just pull over, just very carefully, just to close those legs off a little bit. Needs a little bit more. And that's pushed all the way home. Then we need to do the traction driver IC4, which is L6202. L6202, which is the 16-way one. We'll fold those up a little bit. And the same again, you put the lug to the lug, then we need to do the traction driver IC4, which is L6202. L6202, which is the 16-way one. We'll fold those up a little bit. And the same again, you put the lug to the lug, a little bit of, just a little bit. Just close it just a little bit more, it's still a little bit. There we are, that's that one home now, that's okay, that's all in. Then we put in the booster interface driver into IC6, which is MC4426YN, MC4426YN, and the same thing again. We just need to bend those legs a little bit, so they are a little bit splayed out. And the same again, you find the lug, and the lug goes to the lug on the board. And there we are, that one's clipped in straight away. So that's it, we now have all the chips in. So we now need to insert a jumper link onto J7. The yellow and orange LED should now also be illuminated, indicating that the internal mini booster is powering the traction output, and the green LED should continue to flash. Using an AC voltage setting on the multimeter, check that the voltage across the pins of J3. This should be above 12 volts AC depending on the meter. So we need to find our little jumper again, and that needs to go onto J7. Now then, we have a thing here that the instructions haven't shown us. We need, back to these, we're going to need to cut those into another two. those to another 2 and solder those into J7, which is just alongside the large chip. So I'm going to have to go off and do that, and I'll be back in a minute. Right, so we've now put the jumper on J7, and what the instructions are telling us now, that the yellow and orange LED should also be illuminated, which they are. Both the yellow and the orange one are illuminated, indicating that the internal mini booster is powering up the traction output. The green LED should continue to flash using an AC voltage setting. On the multimeter, check the voltage across the pins of J3, and this should be 12 volts AC depending on the meter. Should be above. So we go to AC, we go to those, which these are the track connections. Go to the track. Mine is telling me it's 11.2. Right. That depends on the meter. So 11.2 I think I could live with. And now we connect the AWD and apply a short circuit across J3 to test the module short circuit protection. So we take our our buzzer, and we pop that in. Right, so now the plug is right. I in fact told you wrong how to put those in. You press them in the other way round until they clip in. And once they've clipped in, then we short out the track ones, and that's showing that there's a short circuit, so the whole board is now working correctly. So that is the end of this tutorial. I would like to say it is my first tutorial, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it will be of some use to you, and if so, hopefully I shall do some more for future boards. I'd like to say thank you very much. Bye bye. Right, so now the plug is right. I in fact told you wrong how to put those in. You press them in the other way round until they clip in. And once they've clipped in, then we short out the track ones, and that's showing that there's a short circuit, so the whole board is now working correctly. So that is the end of this tutorial. I would like to say it is my first tutorial, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it will be of some use to you, and if so, hopefully I shall do some more for future boards. I'd like to say thank you very much. Bye bye.